All right. Woo.
It's loud today.
Yeah, that is loud today. We're going to push that back. Okay. You guys. All right. Welcome, everyone. Glad to see that we have so much citizen participation today. We're really hoping that you guys give us some good public comment. First and foremost, I just want to make a personal apology. The survey that was put out a little over a week ago, while I had said was on behalf of the Community Trust Commission, I was the one who created it and I did not get commission approval. I was feeling the stress of the report that we did to City Council and the feedback that we had gotten, and I kind of put my ego first and said I wanted to solve a problem, and I didn't follow protocol. And I also breached one of our pillars of trust, which is open and transparent communication. So I just want to apologize not only to my fellow commissioners, but to the community as a whole, because it's really hard for us to come up here and, preach trust when, I myself can't even uphold those values. So I appreciate the amount of grace that the commission has given me up to this point. And I hope that the community does the same. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive into our agenda. The first thing that we're going to do first is we have two commissioners, alternates that are about to be full-time commissioners. So I'm appointing Catherine Bullard and Gary Drape as full-time commissioners to fill the two vacant spots that we have. Are there any objections to that? No? Okay, if there are no objections to that, then we will move on to attendance. So if you could please say here, present, and raise a hand, that'd be great. Catherine Barrett. I see you, Catherine. You're on mute, but I see you. Aaron Black.
Here.
Catherine Bullard.
Here.
Jonna Drake.
Here.
Gary Drape.
Here.
Tara Hildebrand Show.
Here.
Lori Ward.
Here.
Sarah Mayer.
Here.
Jordan Pryor here. Mike Scholl.
Here.
Jessica Schneider.
Here. Here.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We see you. All right. Ron Stoddart.
Here.
Patty Swiger. Merlin Thompson. Pretty sure I saw his
Here.
name. Okay. Shane Vick.
Here.
Natalie Walsh.
Here.
Excellent. It looks like everybody's here today. All right. The next thing we're going to do is go to the approval of minutes. So we did have a slight change to our meeting 6 minutes. I believe that there was an issue with attendance. That's been fixed. Are there any other additional things that anyone on the commission feels needs to be made to the meeting 6 minutes? There are no objections, then I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. And then for the meeting 7 minutes, are there any additional changes that need to be made? There are no additional changes that need to be made. I move that we approve the meeting 7 minutes as well.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. That leads us to our next agenda item, which is public comment. So if anybody in council chambers would like to come up, feel free. And then if you would please state your name, of course.
Does that sound okay?
Yes, sir.
My name is Donald Jessic. And just like my parents, I've been a citizen of the United States of America for all of my life. For about the last 40 years, I've also been a citizen of Loveland, Colorado. We have a great community here. I'm going to pull out my notes.
No worries.
My comment really kind of pertains to what's going on here in our country. We have a crime wave that is sweeping across our country. I think we all know that. Fentanyl has become a weapon of mass destruction. It really has been. There's a torrent of fentanyl. It's flooding across our southern border, killing thousands of Americans in the prime of their life. Last year here in Colorado, we have lost over 625 Colorado citizens due to this. Everybody loves data. Here's some data. In 2020, 9 people were murdered in Pueblo, Colorado. In 2021, just last year, 29 people. An increase of over 200% in one Colorado city. Pueblo has a population of about 114,000. Loveland is about 82,000. Imagine if a Loveland citizen was killed every other week. That's what's going on in Pueblo, Colorado. Denver, record homicides, 96 last year. I recently obtained 5 editions of the Reporter Herald. They have a section called the Daily Report. 5 editions. I took out some data out of just 5. Here in Loveland, vehicle theft, 11. Hit and run, 15. Fraud, 17. Theft, 9. Shoplifting, 9. Harassment, 9. The numbers keep going on. If I would extrapolate those out over a year's worth of editions, these numbers would be in the hundreds. This crime wave is at our doorstep. I can go on, but to save some time, we can't really wait until September for this commission to recommend to our city what needs to be done. We need to defend and protect our community. We need to get behind our police department. And we also need to hold them accountable if they screw up, okay? We all know that they're human beings like us,
Correct.
okay? New York Police Department. Officer Jason Rivera and Wilbert Moore, they were assassinated responding to a disturbance call. We've had 30 cops, more than 30 cops shot this year, just this year. Okay? That's what's going on in our country. We need to fight to keep our community safe. Why did I bring up Pueblo? They're like many other cities. They've lost the fight against crime. We cannot lose the fight against crime here in Loveland. We all know that soft on crime policies do not work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, my name is Olivia Lowe. I'm going to read to you the purpose of this trust commission. Just part of the ordinance, not because y'all don't remember what it is. I'm sure you do, but I think some other people might not remember what it is. The purpose is to understand the various issues impacting community trust, beginning with the Loveland Police Department, but not limited to that department. That's what you guys were asked to do. But you know that. The council person that enacted this knows that. There is no way, sorry. This commission was set up to fail. And everybody knows it, at least people that are paying attention. We lost trust with our city government the minute one of our counselors asked for this commission to be organized. And this is the thing. It wasn't even his idea, was it? He enacted this farce for campaign purposes. It's hard enough for 9 people to agree on anything, as we bear witness to on the first and third Tuesday of every month, much less 16. But the council person that enacted this ordinance, this ad hoc committee, knows that. There's no way this commission can complete the task at hand in 1 year. The scope of this ordinance proves that. That said, the work that you guys have done so far is quite admirable, and I'm not sure they were ready for that. But to add insult to injury, our city government admonished this commission for doing the very thing that they were asked to do. It's proof positive that the majority of our counselors cannot be trusted. This whole thing is a catch-22. You know, city government does not have to operate with great malice to do great harm. The absence of trust and understanding are sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you. there anybody else? Yes.
Commissioner Dry. I'm just here to read into record the emails that were sent to this commission to be read for public comment so that they're not just lost in the rear of the packet. So first one, greetings, commissioners. Thank you for your hard work. You guys are the real deal. The community needs you. We trust you. Don't let the lying and hateful politicians slow you down. They are the source of betrayal. You are the brave medics, courteous under fire, forward, ever forward. I know many citizens who honor you. You are the milestone for the safety of the city. We are grateful with countless thanks. You want me to read who it was from? Or?
That was the end of the first one, correct?
It was in the, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm just resetting the timer. You can start with the second one.
Oh, well, okay. These aren't my comments, so. Okay, second one is, on Wednesday evening, I'm online watching Jordan and Sarah first council presentation. I paused halfway to send this brief word. I think they meant Tuesday because this was at council. Congratulations. Do not despair. You are doing an amazing job. I'm preparing another email soon. Until then, thank you. Okay, third one.
Okay.
To the Loveland Trust Commission. The commission has shown with its first report that it intends to thoroughly investigate and report problems citizens have with City of Loveland leaders, administration, and staff. Well done. It should not be the mission to flatter or unduly praise our fearless leaders. I'm going to list several of my personal observations that I've not only witnessed firsthand, but have had others come forward and request my input to resolve conflicts. The LPD, the department seems to have a problem with dealing with types of crime that greatly aggravate many residents. Auto theft, burglary, trespassing by urban nomads, blatant disregard for traffic rules, noise violations, and all are unsolved so far. Dispatch have behaved as if complaints are a nuisance and challenged the veracity of their statements. Also, why is any LPD officer patrolling streets in Fort Collins while being paid overtime by Loveland? Council, the current self-appointed leader, Fogel and Overcash, need to have a far better effort in representing their constituents. They are focused mainly on causing Loveland to expand and gentrify. The majority of residents I have discussed this with are not in favor of City Hall taking such active roles. Fogel repeatedly gaslights in order to support developers who become dependent on the government. Financials in order to support developers who become dependent on denying tax increase measures. An example, council approved an incentive package for the Brands project amounting to $480 million and refused to fund improved train crossings that would have cost $10 million. The crossings would allow trains to pass through Loveland quietly. Economic Development Office. The department has a lot of sway with respect to who receives financial assistance from a myriad of subsidy schemes, all of which do cost Loveland residents a loss in tax and fee revenues. That info is, the staff has been questioned about details of council has to approve. Responses from staff have been that information is proprietary and we have a non-disclosure agreement with the recipient. I am basing my request on the feelings that this is a sound deal. I would be reasonable to severely limit the award of subsidy to business and developments who expect City Hall to maintain secrecy when offering public funds and to give these details the same scrutiny a commercial bill. That's just 3 of areas of concern. I have others to address later this year. That's that. And I have one more, I think.
I believe so.
Good afternoon. I'm writing this in hopes that it will reach each of the members and be read during public comment at your next meeting. Dear Citizen Trust Committee members, first of all, I want to thank you for a wonderful presentation during the January 25th council meeting. Thank you for all the hard work you have done for all of us. Please note the disrespect you received from a few council is noted. It is also noted that the guidance you received on where this was supposed to go from council was demeaned by the very people who set you up on council. Please know that many of us saw that. To me, it looked like your presentation would not have pleased Overcash, Fogel, Olson, Foley, regardless of what you brought forth. Hold fast. You are doing what we all expect you to do, and that was to regain trust with the LPD as your main goal now. It is upsetting that there are few on council who fought against you on the very matter of the LPD. This committee was set up from the start. I do, however, mention the part I found extremely concerning. I found it appalling to hear from Overcash that a few of the members of this committee ran to him and tattled about some issue some of you were having with each other or the committee itself. You see, right there, the trust in the trust committee was broken, not only amongst yourself, but the community. The kind of petty, insignificant drama does not belong out in the open during a council meeting. The things he stated were things that you should have discussed with each other. It simply took sophomoric, and it was an embarrassment upon the HACTC, to be honest. Trust starts within, and if your fellow members cannot trust you to go to them to discuss those issues, but rather running to a council member to tattle, then that is a problem of mistrust you just created. Also, the LPD is something I hope you keep looking into. That is my feedback. Thank you. You don't have another one, do you?
No, that should be all of them. And then if you don't mind joining us at the table once you're done.
I have. There's not social distancing enough there for me. So
Okay.
I prefer to stay out there.
Sure thing.
I do.
All right, deep breath, everybody. I'm Neil Young, and I do not trust Joe Rogan at all, okay? Not at all. I don't know if you can help me with that or not. Sir, do you have an Iowa Hawkeye there on your hat? That's too bad. All right. Way too bad. Hey, listen, you know, I'm an individual citizen. I just came here to support you, the commission. The 16 of you. All right. Here's my 2 trust issues. The police. Okay. I think it's a target rich environment. All right. There are a lot of things going on. Sorry, guys. I don't trust you.
Make sure that you bring all your comments to the forefront, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
You're okay.
Okay. So I have a lot of distrust here. You know, when I look at what has gone on, you know, the Paul Sowell case, my goodness, you look at the violence in that. Holy cow. 290,000 we paid. All right. No, I don't trust. The other thing I don't trust, city council. Okay. We've talked about it a little bit here. There are at least 7. And to make it around 9, I would include these 2. Okay. I'm not sure I have a whole lot of trust in these. There are 2 I have no problem with. So if we're looking for trust issues, I say we continue with the police department. We add city council. As an individual citizen, those are my concerns. I support you.
Thank you for the comment, sir.
Hi, Sarah McKean. I'm just here to also say I support you. I thank you all for taking the time to do what you're doing here. I just wanted to also say that I would implore you to consider, as someone that sits on another commission, to extend the amount of time you meet for. I'm not sure how you can fully get anything done in such a short period of time. So please consider that next time you have that discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else in chambers have a comment? All right.
Good evening, Bill Jensen. I'm real happy with the audience tonight. I am, after what I saw recently at the city council meeting when Jordan had to defend the ordinance, I knew that you guys needed to hear some support. So I did spread the word a little bit that there'd be an event in the audience tonight here to express their support for you. I do trust you guys very much. And I just wanted to say a couple things. Well, first, what you heard a moment ago at the microphone from several of the speakers is something I concur with strongly. I appreciate them. I appreciate those comments. Jordan, I also appreciate your apology. And I think your request for grace is well taken. You have mine. I think everyone behind me has grace for you also. And I think you're an inspiration to the seats behind you where the city council sits. I think they should listen to the words you had this evening when you began the meeting. So I really appreciate that a lot. I also went through some previous notes from some previous meetings. I think it was Catherine Barrett. I might be wrong. She wanted to add accountability to one of the pillars of trust. Did I get the name right?
I believe that was Commissioner Barrett. Yeah, she's.
Okay. So thank you, Catherine. I was here the evening when you guys voted on the 8 pillars. I don't know where the number 8 came from, and I was kind of confused that trust could actually be defined by a commission. At any rate, I was very disappointed that evening that the word accountability never came up, or if it did, it was replaced by different words, 8 different words that didn't include accountability. So thank you, Catherine. I want to conclude as a few speakers tonight had a few things to say about the city council. So I would conclude with the words of Thomas Paine, a great founding American, quote, "A body of men holding themselves accountable to nobody ought to be trusted by anybody." So the city council, accountable to no one, I don't think they should be trusted. Well, they're politicians. So, but I really urge Catherine's suggestion of accountability to be placed into the 8 pillars of trust.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anybody else in chambers with public comments? Okay. Hannah, do we have any phone-in comment?
Thank you, Chair Pryor. Callers, if you'd like to speak to public comment, please press *9 on your phone or choose the raise your hand feature. And caller with the phone number ending in 1695, if you can press *6 on your phone.
One moment, can you hear me?
You're unmuted, but you might have to speak up.
All right, one moment. Get the correct speaker on here. My name is Lori Coulter, a Loveland resident. I basically was able to watch City Council last week in your presentation.
Caller,
I thought you did an excellent, hello? I thought you did a wonderful job detailing what you've gone through and all the resources you've compiled up to this point. So don't let them get you down, guys. I think you're headed in the right direction. So keep up the good work. I wanted to drop a few resources your way. I know there's a survey that is out there, but I wanted to reference a survey that had been compiled by the Denver Task Force to Reimagine Policing and Public Safety. They sent out a questionnaire to various people and organizations, and subsequently were able to come up with 112 recommendations. And those recommendations, you've got to be able to glean something from those. I was able to read through a few of them, and I'll send you the link in email so that you have it. And maybe that will help with your final recommendations. And then I wanted to make sure that you knew about the, this is my personal opinion, is that we need a citizens oversight committee. And I believe an oversight committee would build trust both ways. It makes everybody work together. And doing that, establish trust, I hope. So in that vein, there is a National Association of Citizen Oversight of Law Enforcement. Let me repeat it. The National Association of Citizen Oversight of Law Enforcement, which also has a substantial number of resources. And I had one more. Oh, I also wanted to be a proponent of community-based policing, where there's outreach to the community from the police department and from the community to the police. And that can take various forms. I know there's officers out there working in volunteer work, and I think the more we see of our police officers in a civilian status, I guess, the better off we're going to trust them. And that's about all I have for now. I will send you the link to that task force report. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more callers?
I do not see any more hands, Chair Pryor. Oh,
Okay.
hold on. Bob Massaro just raised his hand.
Okay.
Bob, if you can accept the request to unmute, please.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll be really quick. I want to voice the same opinion others have in support of this commission. You guys did an exemplary job the last time when you were reporting to the council. That was hostile and it should not have been. The one thing that I think is still outstanding, and first I want to give a compliment to most of our police in this department. I think these guys are doing a really good job. The problem is there's some bad apples floating around, and that's what has to be uncovered. I'm not sure that's fully your job because the internal report should expose some of that, but your job is to make recommendations after that. And I hope you guys can continue to work together because you're setting an example that, I hate to say this, the city council should follow, of cooperation and trying to work together. That's important. So I'll let you guys go. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to speak to public comment, please press *9 on your phone or choose the raise your hand feature.
I'll give it just a second longer. All right, well, if there is no more phone in comment, I will give just a second longer for anybody else in the chambers who might want to come up here and speak. If not, then we will begin our report. Okay. All right, then that concludes public comment. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is going to be a blue team presentation. If you would please make your way up to the front. Thank you.
evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Bob Tyser, Chief of Police. Also acknowledge the city attorney and the city manager and city clerk. Thanks for grabbing us today. This evening, there's a presentation on the team process at the Loveland Police Department. I have three of our very fine staff members here at the organization here tonight that will be participating in this presentation. The very first one who will be handling the majority of the presentation is our Assistant Chief of Operations, Ray Butler. Ray is the one responsible for patrol operations. Therefore, he is the key staff officer, command officer in the department dealing with the majority of blue team reviews in the organization. He has the intimate knowledge to present on that. We also have today with us Sergeant Brian Bartness, who is our professional standards sergeant. He is the one that is the main link and responsible supervisor for handling internal affairs investigations on the department. And also in the audience is Lieutenant Jeff Pyle. Lieutenant Pyle is one of our 5 lieutenants on the department. And why he is here tonight is, you've heard us speak about the 5 committees that we've assigned at the department to address the 5 sections of the Jensen Hughes report and the recommendations in this. Lieutenant Pyle is the chairperson of the committee that has a variety of responsibilities. One of them is blue team. So he will be that person responsible for taking feedback, looking at the current policy and moving forward. So we have the key people here tonight, and I'd like to turn it over with your permission to Assistant Chief Butler to walk through the presentation for you. And we understand we have about 30 minutes. I know we'll move through it as rapidly as we can, but it's a pretty significant policy and is very important community topic to discuss.
Thank you, Chief Tyser.
Yes, sir.
Do you want one of these up there? Because that microphone can be a little quiet sometimes.
I generally talk pretty quiet, so you'll have to tell me if I'm doing okay or.
Can you just state your name real quick, just so I can hear it in the mic?
I'm Assistant Chief Ray Butler. I'm Operations Assistant Chief. Is that okay? Will that work?
Yeah, I believe so. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. Passing around some kind of addendums to the information you've already received. I'm sure if you looked at the packet that we sent out, the flow chart at the end was kind of hard to follow, kind of hard to see. So we made some larger copies. It's the same information you have in your packet. Also going around is a copy of our use of force policy. I wasn't sure if you guys had any briefing on that or information on that, but that's something that's referenced in the presentation I'm about to do. So you have that there in front of you in case you have any questions or comments as we move through. So tonight I'm going to talk about the blue team itself, the blue team creation, the blue team review, blue team independent review, and the early intervention system that we have in place. And then as I move along through here, if you have any questions, please raise your hand or ask. I'll be happy to stop and answer any questions as we go along. And at the end, we can bring it all together. And if you have any questions, further questions about it, we can discuss those. So.
If you guys have questions that you believe can wait till the end, just write them down. Unless it's something like you need a clarification, let's try our best to hold as much of our questions till the end, please.
And as I move through, I'll try to not use police lingo. So hopefully you don't have to have a bunch of questions as we go along. But if I do throw something out there that maybe you don't understand, please raise your hand and we'll try to clarify those points for you. So the term blue team has been around a lot. It's been in the news, it's been in the press, it's been in different discussions, it's been in presentations that the chief has talked about, discussions city managers talked about. Blue team is actually a program. It's just a computer program, and that's the name of it. That's the trademark name of the program we use to track different things. The blue team is a post-incident reporting system. It's something that we use to look out after. I mean, obviously, the chief and I can't be out there 24/7, so we have a system that we have in place so that we ensure that everything's being monitored and looked at from supervisory position. This is not a substitute for our frontline supervisors. We expect them to be out there with the officers dealing with things on a daily basis. But this is just a process that we have in place to do things. It's a way to have notifications all the way around the board, all the way across the board. I will come in and I know that blue teams have been generated from the night before, and I'll talk about the criteria that we have for a blue team. So there's 12 things that we ask of our officers to create a blue team. There's 12 incidents that happen out there that we require by policy that they create a blue team. Discharge a firearm outside of training. A lot of people question that. They're like, when does that actually happen? Actually, in Colorado, that happens quite a bit. A lot of times we have to dispatch animals that are injured in car wrecks and things like that. So we have a policy on that. And because we have a policy on that, we ask officers to do a blue team anytime that they discharge a weapon. And that way we're aware of it. So if we get calls, why was there a gunshot or things like that? So we're aware of that. Takes action that results in or is alleged to have resulted in injury or death to another person. So this is again, a reporting system. Now, if something were to happen at night, say that somebody is injured, an officer injured somebody, or somebody was resulted in death to another person, that is handled through the CERT investigation. That's a different policy, but we still, when all that investigation is done, then we would do a blue team on it to look at policies and procedures. But if that happens, it automatically becomes a CERT investigation. And I'm sure you guys have heard that term. That's just a specialized investigation by a third party with the district attorney and other agencies. When an officer uses any type of force, and the force is defined in the policy that I gave out to you, 11.04. Now, one of the things that's really changed a lot over the last few years, the Senate Bill 217 has really changed the definition of force. So this policy is fluid. It changes all the time. We're always changing it to match and mirror the state legislature, when they implement different things. Any use of a force against another person or an animal, physical force is defined by the policy if it's not in the others. Attempts to or uses an impact weapon, displays a firearm, or conducted electrical weapons towards citizens as a means of control, electrical weapons being a taser. So we require officers, if they point a weapon, a gun at somebody or a taser at somebody, then they have to do a blue team, so that we're aware of that, so we can make sure that that was all within policy. If an officer is injured while performing the duties, discovers that someone else has been injured, discovers another is injured during training, even if somebody's hurt in training, because the whole purpose of the blue team is to look at policies and procedures to try to make sure we can do things better, or if we need to change our policies and procedures. And this even applies off duty if they damage department vehicle. If their car is parked out in front of their house and somebody runs into it, we have to do a blue team on that to make sure that everything that we were doing was correct. Engages in a police pursuit, is involved in a traffic crash, no matter how minor. Anytime that somebody dings a car, we have them do a blue team on it. And then the catch-all, when the supervisor directs you to do one. So that could be something that we haven't thought of. The supervisor says, you probably need to do a blue team on that, so that we're aware and we can look at it through the chain of command to make sure it was within policies and procedures. Any questions on the 12 different incidences that we look at? The other requirement for the officers is that they have to complete the blue team by the end of their shift. This is something that we hold them very accountable for. There are exceptions to that. They can get special permission from their supervisor to hold it over to the next shift. We rarely let that happen. Very rarely do we have an officer that doesn't do a blue team. Now, doing a blue team doesn't mean they have to have everything completed. They just have to make the notifications. And we'll talk about what goes into the blue team as we continue on through here. Blue team automatically notifies his or her supervisor, and also through the chain of command, that use of force or a traffic accident or something took place that warranted one of the 12 things. So when the officer does the blue team, what goes in the blue team? they're required to put the report in. Now, again, they don't have to have it done exactly, everything done that night, but they need to have a synopsis of it. The body worn camera, a link to the body worn camera needs to be included in there. And any other thing that has to do with like any other reports or workman's comp, if they're injured, we want that information in there so we can take a quick look at it and see that the supervisor can. So the review process is a 3-tier process at a minimum. And this is if everything goes correctly. The supervisor, the primary employee, is the one that's first responsible to look at everything and make sure that it's all within policies and procedures. We do require them to view the body worn camera of the incident, which is sometimes very difficult. We have, how many officers we have working a day and how many hours and hours of body worn camera. If we have 3 or 4 officers at an incident that lasts for a while, we could have upwards of 25, 30 hours of body worn camera. So we require the supervisors to look at the pertinent information. And I'll talk about how they get to that as we go along. We tell them to require them by policy, they have to view the body worn camera of the pertinent incident. And that comes from the officer's report. That comes from what the officer puts in the police report about what took place. So as you're going through, you're reading the report, and then you know that use of force happened when the person exited the car. Well, you can go to that point and you can look at the point that they exited the car and know that that's the use of force you should be looking at. You go through the rest of the report, you understand what took place, you see if it was in policy procedure. So I guess the one area of this is it's only as good as what the officer puts into the report. And again, the report is held to a high standard with the DA. It's about, the honesty of the report and things like that. The supervisor has 14 days to review and get this out. So again, that sometimes people think that that's a long time, but this is a post-incident review. It does not take the place of on-the-scene supervision by the supervisor. So they have 14 days to review and provide a written summary of what they thought, if it was in policy procedures, and these are the guidelines. At the end, I'll talk about what everybody's supposed to be looking at. After the supervisor looks at it, then it goes to the lieutenant to look at. Lieutenant is also required to do the same thing, read the report, look at the body worn camera, look at any evidence, go through the whole thing. And again, they will go to the pertinent areas of the body worn camera. And all through this process, anybody can look at what we call like a secondary violation. And we get those quite a bit. Maybe someone doesn't use their body worn camera correctly, but that's not part of the use of force. Or they wrecked their car and they were doing something that was out of policy. So they also will look at secondary violations. If just because it's a use of force doesn't necessarily mean that that's all that the supervisor is looking at. So they look at everything. Once the lieutenant goes through and looks at it and either agrees or disagrees with the sergeant on if it was within policy and procedure. And then they will then send it up to the next, which is my level, the assistant chief level. So assistant chief level, I'm looking to see if everybody agreed that it was within policy. And also I review the body worn camera, read the report. I do the same exact thing. And our systems are set up, the blue team, the body worn camera, all that stuff is set up so I can actually click on and make sure that a sergeant or a lieutenant watched the video or how much time they spent in blue team or when they access blue team. So it's all auditable. So we can look at it and see what took place, who looked at what, how long they looked at it, all those different things. One of the things that we also have the ability to do is we have counsel. We have a city attorney that works at the police department. We can bring them in at any point during the blue team process to look at it from a legal perspective, to make sure a lot of times with Fourth Amendment or the use of force or things like that, we have them give us their opinion on it, on what they think. Or at any point in time, we give any of our supervisors the ability to refer it to the professional standards. And at that point in time, if say the sergeant saw something right in the beginning and said, this is wrong, this is excessive force or something like that, then we start the process to do professional standards outside the blue team. We would do an internal affairs investigation. So we give any of our employees the ability to do that, to stop the process and start an internal affairs investigation saying this is outside of policy.
May I interrupt? May I?
I'm sorry, unfortunately, you cannot.
Okay.
So we give them ability to refer this to professional standards to look at it from a different perspective, or if they see something illegal, we can also refer it to the district attorney for a criminal investigation, or we can refer it to an outside agency to take a look at, which we have done in the past several times.
Yes, a clarifying question?
Yeah, is it okay?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
for
go
it.
ahead.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your presentation and kind of sharing the information. The one question I had was, and the one thing that I struggle with kind of as a citizen, kind of non-police officers, if that it's handled, if an incident occurs or something that violates the 12 principles and something is reported, everything is handled kind of internally. And I just was curious if there's any, if there's any kind of audit process or somewhere third party to look back and say, I know you're not going to hand it off to me or hand us the commission, but just some process to say, okay, how are we managing that?
So there is a third party auditing part, which I will get to as we go through the presentation. And it'll talk about as it moves through, it goes actually to a separate entity to take a second look at it. Okay. These are the things that we expect our supervisors to look at up and down: adherence to policy, procedures, and law, appropriateness of the use of force, training failures, policy failures, and exemplary conduct. We like to see when people do good things too. We have a lot of times where someone will save a life, and part of that is in the blue team, and you actually get to watch the body worn camera of our officers doing wonderful things. So we like to include that too. This isn't a punitive process all the way around. We like to see the good things too, because our officers do great things every day out there. At the conclusion of all the reviews, if there's policy, procedures, things that have been found through the chain of command, then at the assistant chief or the deputy chief level, we will make recommendations to the chief. Either there's a lot of things we could do. Additional training for that. We need to look at different policies. We need to maybe look at a professional standards investigation on this particular officer, this particular incident. So we make those recommendations to the chief, and then he at that time takes everything into his and then makes the final decision on that. If everybody agrees up and down that everything was good and there's no problems and no issues, then it's forwarded to professional standards at that time. They do it for tracking the different incidents, different uses of force and things like that. So any questions about the blue team review process itself? So this is what you were referring to is the independent review. So
Just real quick, I do think that we had a clarifying question.
I'm sorry.
So it's forwarded on to the professional standards. Is that like at any time that it is? Like, so if it gets to the second level and everybody's like, it's good, does it then go to professional standards?
No, it goes through after my level and everybody says it's good, then it goes professional standards. But professional standards, it goes to them as a reporting. So they mine information out of it. They mine what type of use of force was, if there's an accident, how fast they were going, these different things that we can look at to compile data. And that's why Sergeant Bartness is here, in case you have questions about the information and data that comes from that. So, but before I talked about being able to refer to professional standards as an internal affairs investigation, that's where we start an investigation maybe to see if there was some kind of a policy violation or something that was abnormal outside the process.
And then just to clarify for me. So when a blue report starts, does it go to all 4 levels always? Or does it stop sometimes when your guys are like, oh, it's all good, we followed policies?
I see every blue team. I see every blue team that comes through in operations, which is a majority of them, of the blue teams within the department. I see every one of them. So go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So what if there's disagreement? How does that work within the culture of the police department for someone to disagree with somebody else's evaluation of the same material?
So it depends where the level is at it. So if I have a sergeant and lieutenant are disagreeing with it, I step in and try to look at it from a different type of view or different things like that. We always try to err on the side of caution, and then we will forward it up to the chief or have the city attorney look at it. Different things, different avenues that we can take a look at, because there is a lot of opinions. Obviously, we're asking for people's opinions on what they saw, how people acted. A lot of times I see the disagreement is when somebody maybe watches more of the video than the other person did. Do you know what I'm saying? So that they picked up something, maybe a secondary thing afterwards, and they come back and say, well, did you notice that this, profanity was used after this? Well, the first person will say, no, I didn't go that far in the video. So we'll go back and look at it and say, yeah, that's not part of the policy and how we expect officers to be. So.
Quick follow-up. Thank you for that. How many times does that typically happen with blue team reports that there is a disagreement in the evaluation process?
I think it's something that doesn't happen very often because, we all have varying different experience, but we're all trained to look at things the same way. So like I said, the majority of them are, we have secondary violations that maybe somebody didn't pick up in the beginning. So, if you have a pursuit, we're looking at the pursuit and we have a policy in front of us. So you can tell, you're listening to the radio calls, the pursuit, up and down the chain of command, you can say, well, that was not within policy. And people pretty much agree up and down on that. So
You would say 98% of the time?
it would be very difficult for me to give a number on that. I don't know, because we have discussions about stuff. We talk about it. We talk with the city attorney. We look at different things. So, having clarifying questions and going back and talking to people, I don't think is necessarily disagreeing, just maybe clarifying with what people think. So, to give you kind of an answer on that, I have not had one where you had somebody absolutely digging their heels in saying this was not policy and somebody else saying this was policy, because we have the same training, we have resources, we can look at it. We have case law on everything that happens out there. So we can refer to that. We can get different opinions. We can talk to training. A lot of times we'll refer something to training and say, are we teaching officers this technique? Is this something that we're out there teaching them? If we are, then maybe we need to address that. So it's really a discussion more than someone digging their heels in on something.
And just real quick, everyone, just a reminder, let's try and stick with just clarifying questions. Like if you want to know what an acronym means or something like that, some of the harder hitting questions, write them down and we'll get to them at the end. Also, before you speak, remember to say this is Commissioner so-and-so, just for Patrick, who's taking our notes. No, you're okay. So Natalie, was your one question a clarifying question? Or?
It just had to do with this topic before we moved down, but I can do it.
Okay, thank you.
So the next part of the process is blue team independent review. So there's some definitions up here that you need to take a look at. And this is actually an administrative regulation from the city. This is through the city of Loveland. This is not a Loveland PD policy. So you see the community observer standard, and then the incidents of plausible community concern and incidents of suspected community concern. And I'll talk more about how those come into play in this review process. So I think you went 2 though. So this talks about the command staff review, as I discussed. You know, anytime anybody can initiate a professional standards investigation. So if we do initiate a professional standards investigation, the chief of police is obligated to notify human resources so they can start their process on their side. And then if somebody in the command designates as the case, those definitions that I use, an IPCC or an ISCC, and then would forward it to the county attorney's office. So if we had an incident that is of special concern or possible concern, then we would forward it to the county attorney's office. And at that time, also HR receives the same information. Human resources receives the same information. So they start looking at it from the human resources side. And then human resources will review all of those under the community observer standard that we talked about. And that's a standard of the layperson within the community, not a police officer, somebody that's looking at it from the public view to say, that doesn't look right to me, or that made me uncomfortable, something along those lines. So they look at it from that standard. And they actually have a person that is a civilian, is not employed by the police department, that looks at these from those standards. And it talks about if they find something in there, then they will confer with the chief and the county attorney's office to kind of come up with the same thing. We talked about the agreement, disagreement. If they are all agreeing or disagreeing on if a professional standards investigation should be opened or not. And then ultimately the city manager would have the final say in that. And then part of the review process is the cases that everybody agreed to all the way up, that everybody said, this is good, this is good, this is good. And then I forwarded to professional standards so they can do their reporting, grab their data from and all that stuff. Human resources goes through and reviews all of those from the community observer standard. So that's happening after we're done with it. After we've said, hey, we're good with all this, we have a third party that comes in and looks at them. And they look at the same thing that we're looking at, but they look at it from that slightly different perspective. You know, police have a different view of how things are compared to the public. So we rely on them to, again, look at it and say, that made me uncomfortable, or that didn't seem right, and we should probably take a look at this. And then that starts the process back up for the city attorney's office, human resources, and the chief gets back involved into it, and then the city manager if ultimately we need to. One of the other things that we have, and I'm not sure if you guys have been briefed on it or talked about, early intervention system. It's a system within Blue Team that's in the background that's tracking everything that's going on, and it tracks it by the officer's name or the officer's badge number. So it knows all the time what's going on through the system. And it has, we set up the criteria for that. So if we have an officer that has, it looks at special reports, complaint investigation, use of force, pursuits, and city vehicle crashes when we're damaging cars out there. It's looking at those to see if there's officers that are doing this over and over again or within a short amount of time, which could signal different problems within training, maybe personal life, things like that. So the system automatically is tracking that and trying to point out potential officers that are having difficulty, or if they've just ran into some different things. I can tell you that most of the time the early intervention comes from the frontline supervisors. We're a small enough department where the sergeant will step in and say, hey, so-and-so's, wrecked third car in a month. And we need to take a look at it, They're backing into stuff. So, maybe they're not, are they having problems at home, things like that. So we look into it further. But we look at, I think it's on here. So the incidences are 4 incidences within a month is what we have it set up. So it'd be any combination of those. So if we see an officer that has a wreck, a use of force, another wreck, and then a citizen complaint, then we start a whole new process where the supervisor will receive notification automatically. And then they have 8 working days or 14 calendar days to meet with the officer, discuss, try to figure out what's going on. Look at each incident individually, and then also look at everything holistically to see if there's a pattern within all those issues or problems. 8 working days. I don't know if you guys have been briefed on this, how we do our shifts, but officers work 4 days, 11 and a half hours, 3 days, 11 and a half hours. So there's a lot. Sometimes they'll go several days without being at work. So. And then, we try to make a final determination through the chain of command all the way up to the chief, try to address the problem, see if there's, stuff going on at home where he's just not focused, the officer's not focused at work, or if we have a problem with an officer being too aggressive and we need to change that, or we need to part ways with that officer. So we take it serious, and we try to look out for the officers. We also try to make sure that they're doing their job and doing it well out there. So the flow chart that I handed out is the part of the secondary review. That's with the administrative regulation through the city. So if you follow that through, you can see what happens with the complaint and when it's designated, where it goes, and what happens with the blue teams and things like that. So do you have any questions?
I will go ahead and say Natalie, because I know she's been waiting patiently.
I want to thank, oops, that's very loud. I want to thank the department for putting some cops on 8th Street during rush hour today. I think you got some tickets written. People are flying down 8th Street now that 1st Street is closed off. So thank you very much for your presence on 8th Street. It's very helpful. I live on 8th Street and it's been impossible to get out of our driveway.
Thank you for the feedback.
You made a really important statement, which, it all depends on a good first report by the officers. And, I think if, as we begin to talk about it, it'll be like, well, okay, what do you do if, people hate self-reporting. It's almost against our nature. I think my question is going to be, what are the disciplinary consequences if an officer is, not necessarily fully accurate or comprehensive in their initial reporting into the blue team system?
So, there's so many variations of what the question that you just asked. If somebody's outright dishonest and does not put stuff in there that is relevant or that happened to maybe not self-report to try to hide something, there's no room at the department for that, and they will be terminated if that's proven.
Is that a first bite thing, or is it something that there's a pass on?
If they're dishonest in their reports, then they're done. They're done as a law enforcement officer in Loveland, in the county of Larimer, in Colorado.
Okay.
So
we would find that would be an automatic reason, a reason for automatic termination.
Yes, they do have due process. I'm kind of jumping ahead and assuming that we proved that they were lying and things like that. But if there's omissions that maybe were by mistake or, could be characterized different, we'll have them make a supplement to that, not change the original report, but make a supplement to that. And that's pretty easy to look at and see because we have the body worn camera that shows what the person said, what the officer said, what happened, and things like that. So we look at all of those. And if it's an omission that, by mistake or something along those lines, we look at that and have them do a supplement to that. But the dishonesty part is the one that would be the end of their career.
I mean, that's the hardest thing as an employer, because you're not with everyone, 60 minutes an hour. But sort of along those same lines, so is there any type of spot checking that, just as part of training, I think I would say, or as a supervisory function where supervisors spot check the reports of their supervisees?
So supervisors approve all of written reports. They're required to go through, read them, and approve just the written report itself. They're also required to watch a certain amount of body worn cameras randomly through the cycle. We track that with our program, so we know which sergeants are randomly viewing things. And again, with the blue team, with the body worn camera, it tells everything. I mean, there's not really, the report and the body worn camera need to match and show, what took place and what the officer included in that report.
Just the elephant in the room. We're here because that system failed.
Yes.
So, there's just, kind of lingering questions. I'm not going to ask you to, discuss things that the city attorney has asked us not to go into. But I just want to, state the obvious. So we're kind of struggling with that because
the whole system relies on that initial report to make sure that everything was included that is pertinent to that report.
Okay. And then one last question. Who's the city attorney that's assigned to you?
Andrew Trevino is the city attorney.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Barrett, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. And thank you for the presentation and for taking your time tonight. Really appreciate it and really appreciate something you said about how, when we asked if there were disagreements, you mentioned that for the most part, there are not, because we all view things the same way as something like what you said. And you also acknowledged that a citizen would view it differently. And I appreciate that very much. So when you look at page 12, when you talk about an incident that would give rise to a concern from a layperson in the Loveland community, Chief Ticer has already expressed support for a citizen body if we should determine that something like that was needed, for a citizen body reviewing use of force incidents. If we do come to the point where we recommend a citizen body to review all of the blue team reports, because we do see things differently, do you think that would be supported by the department?
It would be difficult for me to comment on that right now. I'd have to see exactly how it's all laid out. I mean, we always support and try to be very transparent about everything that we do. So I'm not afraid of something like that. I just want to see how it would work and the processes of it. There's a lot of things that come into play with that because a lot of information in blue teams is privileged information because it's people's criminal histories and date of births and things like that. So there'd have to be some a lot of work put into it to make it work. Right. But as a department, I would not be afraid of having somebody take a look at second check the things that we do.
Okay, because they need your help. Thank you.
All right, Erin, then Tara.
Erin Black, thank you. In regards to CCing the blue team report to other members of the command staff and professional staff, Is that considered an advisement or are they required to review that?
So we don't CC like blind CC people in the blue team. That was an old way of doing things. The system automatically did that. So now if you receive a blue team, you are required to review it.
Oh,
So
okay. When was that change made?
it was changed last year, probably spring, August of last year.
I'm just reading some minutes from the police accountability board that's that's been going for some time. And these minutes are from their September 13th meeting in 2021. And I believe Lieutenant Pyle was there doing a report discussing the blue team report. And is in the minutes, it states, when Ms. Stewart asked about the CC of the blue team report goes to all members of the command staff and professional staff. I guess Lieutenant Pyle responded, the CC is only advising that a use of force incident occurred and a blue team was filed. He clarified that several of the staff members listed on the CC did not review or approve any part of the blue team report regarding the arrest of Karen Gardner.
And that's why we've changed that since then,
Oh.
so that if you receive it, you're required to review it. Before it went out as a blanket to anybody that was on the list. We had professional staff that were getting it that have no rights to even review that stuff. So it was kind of a flaw within the system and how it was set up. So it's changed now. If I receive a blue team, I need to review that. That's part of, it's in my queue, in my inbox, my responsibility to do that.
So all of the members that are included on that list are aware of that new policy. They must review that and
Yes, if somebody gets a blue team, they know that there's for them to review. So there's not the, before someone would initiate, say, a blue team on a traffic accident. And then we had, I think it was upwards of 20 some people that would receive notification that that took place. And only one person was responsible for reviewing that. And that was the frontline supervisor who was not CC'd in the mass CCs in the beginning. So it was really an issue with the system and how it was set up.
and then just a quick follow-up as far as the organizational chart, we see ranks, but no names. So is that specific to the officer who generates the blue team report? That's so the sergeant rank, the lieutenant rank, all of that is determined by the officer,
Where the officer works,
where the officer
Yeah,
works.
his
So
chain-
those names would change, but the rank would.
his or her chain of command is different with every position they have. We have school resource officers that have a different chain of command.
Okay.
Traffic officers have a different chain of command. We have 6, 8 squads that have different chain of commands. And then, so it just changed. So we have a lieutenant over certain groups, another lieutenant over certain groups. Sergeants have their squad, things like that. So.
Thank you.
All right, Tara.
Commissioner Hildebrand. And my first question was, so do you guys review the video within the station? Like I know, like you addressed the review of the body cam worn video, but do you also have anybody reviewing like what happens within the station?
So you're talking about the booking area.
Yes, yeah.
So if there's something that happens down there, then the officer's obligated to attach that in the body worn, in the blue team itself. So they're supposed to attach all the pertinent information, and then also the sergeant is supposed to make sure that that's all there. And it's all, anything that's pertinent to that investigation needs to be included in there.
So then if there was like no notification that something happened or no flag that something happened, you guys wouldn't usually review that?
Correct.
video? Okay.
Correct.
And then the other one, and this I just picked up on when you were talking, but has there been any discussion of like, how do you guys come up with 11 and a half hours as work shifts? Like, has there been any discussion of maybe shortening that so it's not such a long?
So we look at other agencies, we look at national trends. There's all kinds of information out there on different shifts, different things like that. So we offer two shifts. We offer 11 and a half hour or a 10-hour shift for patrol officers. And, we're always addressing that. We do an annual survey with the chief asks, how is this working? We're all tied into, the National Academy organizations that talk about shifts and things like that. It's a big topic because it is something that people have concern about if officers are working too much. PERF is one of the area. PERF is a police executive. I can't remember the whole acronym of it, but several of us are part of that. They send out studies all the time on information having to do with that. So we go with best practices. We go with best coverage for our department, and then what works best for everybody involved. And we're always changing and trying to adapt and make things better. So we're always looking at it.
And then real quick, Mike, I know you have a question. I do as well, but I do know that we are starting to run a little low on time. So let me ask you before I try to motion for this. Would you guys feel comfortable staying an additional 30 minutes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Then I motion or.
I should have looked back first. I didn't.
I move that we extend our meeting 30 minutes. So until 8:30.
I would second. I have a question about that. I know that Catherine Bullard, regular commission member, very exciting. I noticed at city council that one of the complaints that we had was that we didn't meet long enough.
Mhm.
And I think they're correct. I'd like instead to move the 8:30 be our normal ending time, and it can easily be extended to 9. I think, we're doing a lot of work outside of this, but I think spending this time is vital. So 8:30 is a normal.
Okay, so you're moving that we change the rules of our meeting and that we officially extend all of our meetings to 8:30, and then we could add more time. Okay, well, I second that. I mean, we pretty much always move it to 8:30 as it is. So, yes, Commissioner Drafe?
Yeah, by the way, right?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Commissioner Drafe.
When we first set this up, we did it starting at 6:30. Is there any chance we could move that back up to 6?
No.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We have the police chief and the police deputies here. Out of respect, could we just extend the meeting and then have this discussion in a future meeting? I really think it's important that we respect the time.
I could agree
I
with
believe
that.
the motion on the floor, though, is to extend it personally or permanently.
Well, I thought there was a motion to extend it by 30 minutes this meeting.
That was replaced by a motion to extend it permanently.
Well,
I'm willing to respect.
Okay, so yeah, let's yeah, we'll table that motion for next meeting. Yeah. So yeah, so I move that we, for this particular meeting, extend it 30 minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, all those not in favor, please raise your hand. I believe it was unanimous, but excellent, unanimous. Okay, we will continue until 8:30. Thank you guys for all of that. And then next will be Mike and then myself with questions.
Thank you. And I appreciate, and Chief Tyser, and I do appreciate, it's the second time you've been here, and I really appreciate your openness and candor and willingness to come discuss these important issues with us. So I just want to say that, at least from my personal opinion. One of the kind of questions I had, and I had asked the question at the last meeting about the relationship with the city manager's office, because I think it's kind of an important component. And I know within the police department, chain of command is very important, but within this, there's no mention of, I mean, if there's an expectation that the city manager is the head of the city at large, at what point does that engagement take place? Because I mean, I think it's an important component from an accountability, community accountability standpoint, because I learned when I worked for the city, I mean, the city council hires 3 people: the city manager, the city attorney, Moses, and the judge. And those are the folks that are elected that are accountable by vote in the community. And so I was just curious, how does that dynamic
So if you look
work?
at the administrative regulation, we talked about, part of that, the city manager has the final say in all of this. If there's disagreements on if we should do an investigation or if it warrants this or something like that, the final say on that goes to the city manager.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, sure thing.
Mr. Chair, turn it back over to Assistant Chief Butler in just a minute, but Mr. Scholl. So you have a flow chart there. There's a lot of information on it. There's a lot of policy. There's a new, right? There's a new temporary AR, but in simple terms, if after all this review occurs, and it's significant, there is significant amounts of review, and it's occurring every day. I cannot underestimate how much review that there is going on. And then this interaction that occurs when it gets to my level, and even before my level, with the assistant city attorney, the human resources connection that we have from the city human resources office, are looking at all this. And then when it gets to me, and I have consult with the assistant city attorney and the human resources director, if we are not on the same page, then we have the next level, which is that oversight, which is the city manager, and we get to that point. But I can tell you right now, the assistant city attorneys that I've worked with, you've got the name of our current one. The previous one was Vince Junglis. Many of you know Vince. And the HR department here, they're very, very highly trained, smart people that assist with the decision-making and the final outcomes of this. So it would be very rare that we get to the city manager's office for that, but he's there to be that final decision maker if we're not on the same page.
Cool, thank you.
And then we did have a clarifying question from our vice chairwoman.
This is Sarah Mayer. I just had a quick clarifying question. So HR and the city manager and all of those people are more citizens than they would be like police officers and knowing and understanding policies and procedures. So when they're looking at potentially terminating someone, are they working off of like the normal day-to-day kind of like, if I was a boss at King Soopers firing somebody, or are they working off the policies? Like who's influence, like how are they making those decisions?
I couldn't speak for them on that. I mean, we have policies, we have department policies, but then we all fall under the administrative regulations of the city. And that's what they look at when they go through any type of personnel issues.
Okay. And then I had a question as well, but I do just want everyone to know what the order is. It'll be Shane, Aaron, and then Lori. Just so you guys know, I am keeping tabs right now. My question is, I'm going to kind of stray away from the presentation just a little bit. I saw something in the policies and procedures that kind of made me turn my head a little bit. There's a thing called a vascular neck restraint that I would just like a little bit more light shed on that. Is there, because reading the definition, it sounds to me like what we call an MMA, a sleeper hold. Okay, so I don't understand how that is not considered a chokehold as defined by, I guess, previous laws, but if you could.
Policy, it's banned.
Okay.
It says we can't use it except for in deadly force.
Deadly force is justified. Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you. It caught my eye and I was a little concerned. So, okay. With that, Commissioner Vick.
Hey, thanks for coming. I just have one big question, I guess. I'm gonna assume anything related to the Karen Garner Blue Team is out of the question tonight, correct? Okay. So my question is this: how do you feel your staff currently holds each other accountable?
That's a complete question then? I think we do a very good job at it. I think, I mean, there has been missteps in the past. We've worked very hard. We changed policy. We look at how things are, and we're adapting every day as we go along. And it's a process, and everybody's on board with it to try to make it better. So I think that overall, I think that we do a very good job at it. We handle over 100,000 calls a year, and of that, very few of those are uses of force or result in a blue team. And then those blue teams, it's one of those 12 reasons, and we know why we have the blue team there. So we take that serious and we look at it to protect the department, protect the city. That's our goal when we're doing this. So I think we do very well at it.
Any follow-up, Commissioner Vick?
Nope.
Okay. Commissioner Black?
Thank you. I just have a question about the volume of calls and emails associated with Blue Team reports. Do you feel like that the command staff from sergeant to lieutenant to yourself, your position, that you guys are able to handle the volume of calls and emails that are coming in that you need to review?
So that's, it's a lot, when it gets down to it. There's a lot of things that come through our agency. And I mentioned, basically about 100,000 calls. And of that, roughly, I think about 400 of those result in blue teams.
400?
Is
that a year?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's more than one a day that we're having to look at. So it's an ongoing process. It never ends. And it is something that we work very hard to try to keep on top of.
Right.
But it's challenging at times, especially if we have something else happen within the department where you can't put the attention that you want into that. And then it kind of builds up. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yes. So is there recourse for the command staff when that's happening and you're feeling overwhelmed by the calls?
So there's 2 assistant chiefs and a deputy chief, and we will try to move things around as somebody starts to get behind, or generally it's my area that produces most of them. So I'll ask one of them to, hey, can you take a look at these particular ones, or can you take a second look at this, or things like that. So we try to communicate, try to work those through as a group. It's very important that we present to the chief good findings and that we did our job and thoroughly.
Would you say out of those 400 a year, what are the statistics on those that come back that there was a policy conduct violation?
I don't have that number. And I'm not sure if our PSU sergeant would have that number, but like I said, so policy violations could be secondary violations. It could be that they didn't have the volume up on their body worn camera. It could be that they parked in the road the wrong way. So out and out, like saying, this was excessive force. I mean, that's, ultimately that's the worst case scenario. Very, very few. I would say single digits.
See, as a community member, I would like to have that data. That would be nice to know that of the 400 that came across the command staff for their review, this percentage, that would be nice information to know. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Ward?
Thank you. It's Lori Vistor Ward. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. As somebody who had no idea how any of this blue team stuff works, I think I have a pretty good understanding, at least, from my little level here. And I think that if there were that kind of understanding out in the public, that maybe that would go a ways towards building some trust around this whole situation. Because when you talk about like the layers and the reviews and all of the things that happen, like that's a lot. There's, from the police side and then from the HR side as well. And I know that the average person on the street has no idea that goes on. So if there's some way that can be, shared, I know you guys do community forums and things like that in non-COVID times. So if something like that could be shared, I think that would be super helpful.
Didn't mean to step in, Butler, but I'm very passionate, Commissioner, to what you're asking for. We've been using a word a lot around the police department right now, and that word is opportunity. So this right here is so nice to hear you say that, because here's the beginning of an opportunity to build trust and educate our community about what these processes are. It's significant. I cannot underestimate it. And Assistant Chief Butler is being very humble to your question about workload. We know that there is a recommendation in the Jensen Hughes report asking for additional staff, additional help. We know that, and we are going to examine that, because this assistant chief right here has a lot of responsibility and a lot of leadership oversight in the organization. And he's spending the majority of his time watching body worn camera footage. I have other things, and I think you do as a community, that you would like him to be doing other than watching video after video after video post incident. So we know there is room for support, additional support to help with that, so we can get some of our supervisors back out doing other things. So the beginning of the trust, the beginning of the opportunity starts here. It starts in press releases. It starts in reports to the city manager, to the city council. This is the beginning to help our community understand the ins and outs of the Loveland Police Department and law enforcement in general. Because let's be frank, in our history, in our country of law enforcement frankly has been a fairly closed society. But we work for the community. Sir Robert Peel said that many, many years ago in the 1800s. Community are the police, police are the community. We have to share this with you. But the quid pro quo is you have to share this too. So I hope you take that charge when you leave here tonight and you start that sharing. And we do that as a community. And pretty soon people will understand the term blue team, and it's not a dirty word out there. It's not, they don't say it with a sneer. They say, oh, blue team is an accountability process to make sure we're doing it right. And when we're not, we repair that, we fix that. We work with our people with different lenses, human resources, attorneys, citizens, oversight groups, whatever that is, to be better, because we all want that. And to put a final stamp on what I think I heard earlier, if I can just for a second, is how are we doing right now with this? We are community members here too. We work in this community. We've been dealing with this situation, this Karen Garner case that happened. Our officers, our command staff right now, as they should be, are extremely sensitive to this, are hypersensitive to making sure we don't miss anything. And that's why they're spending so much time on this right now. But we're going to need support, additional staffing, whatever that is. But we need support from our community to let us do that. Let us work through that. Let us look at the policy, because these policies will change. They will change for the better when we get through these community groups. The committees that we're working, those 5 committees. We're going to hear great input from everybody, and we'll make these better. And then next year we'll find something else. We need to make an adjustment there. It's a constant process. So I just want to say I really appreciate that, and I think the opportunity starts here tonight.
And then thank you. And then I have a little bit of a follow-up. And so you mentioned that all of the blue team reports come to you, correct? At the
To somebody at my level, another assistant chief, yeah.
You are your equivalent. And then do they all go to the chief as well?
No, just ones that we have recommendations on.
Problematic. Okay.
Yes.
And then, so there is in policy, the ability for the city manager to then review, but does that ever happen in practice? I mean, and maybe.
So the city manager does not get involved unless there's disagreement
Right.
up and down.
Right, but
So
does it ever get to that level?
I have not seen it at that level since I've been here. I kind of, go ahead.
Well, sometimes the procedure and what happens on the ground aren't always the same for a variety of reasons, not because anybody's doing anything wrong, just because, it never got there or whatever. So I just wanted to, I was just curious if it ever got to that level. I think that's all I have.
And kind of to your point, I try to talk to people about blue teams all the time and they fall asleep. So
Well, no, this was very interesting, actually. I was fascinated. I was not asleep, so good job.
All right. Commissioner Stoddard, myself, and then Vice Chair.
And thank you, Commissioner Ward. I think that those comments and the chief's response it really does touch on a core responsibility of our commission. My question is, although it wasn't in the 8 pillars that we had, is that trust is a two-way street. I don't know whether most of the people in here are married or not, but I think that if you are, and if you have been for a while, you know that trust is a two-way street. There has been a lot of information about problems that the community has with the police department and with other departments in the city. I don't know whether you have data or whether you've done surveys, morale surveys, or feedback from officers, but I'm curious what the status is, attitude is of the police officers in terms of feeling that they're supported and trusted, or whether they feel that there's a lot expected of them, but they're not getting, no one's covering their back. And I'm not talking about within the department, but within the community.
So if you look at the last 2 years, it's been a rough 2 years for law enforcement, with COVID and national events, local events, and it has affected our department to a large degree on that. But talking with officers, and I try to get down and talk to officers as much as I can, they feel like the community believes in them, supports them. They hear that all the time when they're out there on the street. I think the chief was talking the other day and was at a meeting and said, yeah, and the public is still waving with all their fingers when the officers are out there. And, so I think that if you break it down into the officers out there with the public handling calls one-on-one, I think that they feel like there's a lot there. I think that, the events and the press coverage and, a lot of the negative stuff from people that don't even live in this area on social media directed at our officers and things like that. I think that that's taken a hit on them, but they come to work every day and they still go out there and do their job. People become police officers to help people, and it doesn't get lost in when something like this happens. We try to maintain a great department, and we know we have great people, and we're just trying to build on all that.
All right. And actually, Ron, we're on the same brainwave right now. Jessica, I do see you. I have you on my list of names, I promise. I was also going to ask about kind of an internal survey. I mean, is there an anonymous survey that you send out to all of your officers to kind of check on morale or see if they feel comfortable being able to speak to you guys about certain, issues like, I know you guys can't talk about it, but like the Garner incident and everything else where, are they on the inside? Do they truly feel like they can talk to you guys about this? I know that you guys have mentioned it, but is there an internal survey or something that proves that truly they feel okay to talk about this stuff?
So we just had the assessment done. They talked to a lot of officers, so there's a lot of information in there. Every 2 years, our Fraternal Order of Police does a survey they put out to the officers. And then we're CALEA standard certified organization. And CALEA requires we do line inspections. And part of that line inspections is what you're talking about, a survey. So every year we go through every department and do line inspections and hear from officers. They bring up different issues, working conditions, equipment problems, things like that. And we look at it. And then the chief, one Thursday every month, he has an open meeting. He has an open meeting with anybody that wants to show up, and anything is on the table. And he will discuss anything. And, officers will come in there and bring up things that they think that we could do better. And out of that has come a lot of positive things, equipment changes, maybe how we do safety procedures, things that we can do better along the line. So, we try that. We try to get the pulse of it. We go down to the briefings all the time to meet with the officers, and which has been, it's like 2 years of COVID. It's been very challenging because, in-person meetings are very limited, and then they're on for a little bit and then they're off. And so.
But so whenever you guys do, I guess, survey and collect data on them, is it completely anonymous?
Yes.
It is? Okay. Yes. Perfect. Thank you. Then Vice Chair.
Hello, it's Sarah again. So I know that you mentioned that sometimes you see good things in the blue team, and you're able to reward the officer. I feel like, again, to build trust in the community, there are things like when you're online, you can watch all kinds of videos of body worn camera, but it's never pointed out like what the officers have done well. And I think that's an opportunity too for the city to say, hey, listen, officer so-and-so found this person on the road, they rendered aid, they did a great job. And I know internally, like I said, you guys give awards, but I feel like there's some opportunity there to point out good things that happen, because that's just never what's in the world. It's always like.
And a lot of that has to do with the profession itself. Officers don't want that out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair, but I feel like everybody on the community really would benefit
Then,
from seeing.
the body worn camera thing, that has opened up an entire new universe to everybody. And a lot of the things the officers do have to do with saving people's lives in very, very bad situations. And we don't want to embarrass those people by putting that stuff online and things like that. So it's a trade-off. It really is.
But I mean more just generally like announcing that these officers they've done something exemplary, go them, instead of just like, this officer sucks and might go to jail. Well, I think there's opportunity there. I mean, it's honest, right? I mean, come on now, I'm just trying to be real.
That's a challenge, and we have to do better at that. Like the chief said, there's opportunities. I think he's going to speak again, so.
I'll be blunt. Again, it's an ask for help from the community. Here's what, and I have made these observations over the last couple of years, certainly over the last year. Our police officers want to be part of the community. They have, but I will give you exact frank statement right here. Over the last year, when we need your help, when we put positive information out in this community, the city of Loveland, when we put positive information out, our officers get destroyed, get absolutely fried, get destroyed on social media with personal and vicious and horrific verbal attacks on them when we try and share the great things that they're doing. So much that our officers don't want to be they don't want to be out of the media now. We ask them, hey, can we share this with you? This is awesome. You saved this dog from dying in a car with the windows up. And the officers are like, just doing our job, chief. We love to do it, but please do not put my name out on social media right now. I am not exaggerating. I am not making this up. That is an absolute factual destruction of what's going on with social media with our department. So we need your help because we want to share these great things. But right now, we have just been bombarded with negativity when we try and do that. So we need your help.
So I actually did want to just follow up and confirm what Chief Tyser said. I've mentioned it once in a meeting before, but for one of my classes, did a 30-page research project on LPD Facebook usage. And anything positive involving an officer does in fact get very hateful comments. So I did want to just confirm that what he's saying is true. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense as to why they probably don't want to be a part of it, because I've seen it, so,
May I jump back in for a second?
yeah.
Could then, as you were mentioning, there's not very many statistics that are available for everybody. So even just showing more statistics, I think would help the public. Just
So I'm not saying,
numbers.
we have statistics. It's just a matter of if you were wanting something, we can get it for you. You
I
know,
don't mean like as a commission, I just mean generally to get more trust built between the community and the police department, just to have more statistics that are super easy to access. I think that's something that could be added to our recommendations or something, but
thank you.
I want to see the positive also, that's all.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so we are running low on time. I have 3 more commissioners who want questions, and then after that, hopefully we'll have about 5 minutes or so to figure out what we want to do next week. So next is Jessica Schneider.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I want to say a couple of things. One, thank you so much for your presentation. 2, someone tried to break into my home at about 2:30 a.m. this morning, and the police came and were helpful, and I really appreciate that. So I want to say thank you.
Sorry that happened, but I appreciate the feedback. So
Yeah, no, thank you. It was very helpful. I actually had to leave this meeting for a few minutes to speak with one of your officers, and they were helpful as well. I also want to say, or chime in, I guess, on what I've heard other commissioners say, and also talking about opportunities. You know, I really think, well, one, the LPD does have a public information officer. Is that correct?
yes, we do.
Okay. Can we engage with that public information officer? I do think that more consistent communication between LPD and the community in like a clear, transparent, reliable way will be very helpful in building trust. So I wondered if the public information officer might be a step forward.
So you're asking to have them meet with you guys? Is that what you're, or?
I guess, I'm just wondering what the role is. Is it open to expansion? I honestly didn't know that we had a PIO for LPD until today.
Well, that kind of says a lot.
But I appreciate it. I'm not insulting that PIO. That's not an insult. I just wonder how we can engage more effectively.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Yes, City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Commissioner Schneider, that's a good question that you asked. One of the areas, the 5 areas that was pointed out, the Jensen Hughes report, was all of the community engagement. So I think in that area is where I would like to focus anybody that's interested in this particular topic to help us out, as you've indicated, in providing information, not just to a single person, but more of the process that we do. And so I'm looking forward to that feedback. Also, that person used to be one of the lieutenants, and this job would rotate amongst the lieutenants as PIO. So we decided 2 years ago to bring in what we call a civilian PIO that would help present more of the what's going on in the police department in a way that would be understandable by the public. So that's a process in process. And so I appreciate your feedback on that.
Thank you. Commissioner Vick.
Just one quick suggestion, like since we're throwing suggestions out. One, I think the wave of the future is what you guys were talking about, that somebody that knows case law policy sits, and that would be my suggestion to the city. Hopefully we bring it up as a commission, is that we create a position within the PD that person does nothing but watch body camera. But I also understand the heaviness of it, that it has to be someone who knows case law, has to be somebody that knows policy and department and procedure. It can't just be, Joe Blow citizen that thinks just because we put our hands on somebody, it's bad. But I do believe that's probably a way of, or maybe a suggestion coming down the pike, but what's another thing? So other than that, my only question would be, Chair, are we going to talk about anything from the 25th before tonight ends, or is that going to be somewhere else?
It will probably have to wait till the next meeting.
Look at that.
Last question for the evening, Commissioner Bullard.
Well, yes and no. I've appreciated everything that you have had to say, but we also have 2 other guys out there and we haven't heard from them, and I really like to.
Is there anything in particular you would like to ask them?
No, I just want to get to see them and.
Well, I guess come to the front. And if we could get everyone's title one last time, just for notes, so we can start with you.
Assistant Chief.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And then whoever's next is more than welcome.
So I'm Lieutenant Pyle. I have the committee about PIO, part of that communication, and also the blue team reviews and the early intervention system. So I've been taking notes. So that's what I've been doing. I've heard your suggestions and I appreciate them very much. And I'm available for that. So.
Thank you.
Hardness, professional standards. So I'm the one that kind of maintains the blue teams and store it and do all the data collection at the end of the year.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, City Manager.
Mr. Chair, I also want to introduce a third party that's in the back row who did not get up, and that's Karen Reese, who's our HR manager, and she's here tonight as well.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, just because I know that we are running low on time. Yes, Natalie.
Sent out that email asking if we wanted to serve on any of this.
Yes, you can send those to me and to Jeffrey. If you could.
We did.
Okay, then I'll need to go back through. I'm sorry, there's been a slew of emails.
I know. If you want us to contact LPD directly, you can. I think they're started.
Okay. If nobody has any objections with that, I don't mind you guys reaching out to them directly to get started with that. Yes, Lori.
I was just looking forward to the meeting. So I have the thing that said, who's on each. I thought the original one had dates. And I still
I don't believe that there were dates associated.
What she said, we didn't hear that online.
It was, I was just questioning the email that we got about the, what do you call them, so subgroups to look at the recommendations from Jensen Hughes. And I was confused about email and I think I'm okay now.
And I'll have Jeffrey send those back out to you guys one last time.
That'd be good because everything was.
Yes, Patty.
And Chief, I will say, I appreciate the Facebook posts. I don't comment because when you sleep with skunks, you get stinky. So I stay off the comment section, but I will say I do appreciate that.
Yes.
I was just going to say, well, for one, thank you. But there is a meeting starting tomorrow that I know that I signed up for. Is that correct?
I believe there are some that are starting tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly which ones. So
I think you're the head of it.
Is there a possibility that we could get an updated list? Because I don't believe that ours had dates associated with it. Is there a way we could get that? Perfect. Thank you.
I oversee the whole thing.
So you won't be there. Okay.
I may be there.
Okay.
Yes, just real quick, please. Thank you.
So Commissioners, Schweiger? Yeah, I think the one you're talking about tomorrow is Community Engagement Committee. So that's at 3:30 PM in the police training room. Hopefully you're there. That'd be great. And I'll just put one more exclamation mark on it. We want our community to be part of this process. We know you're representing a lot of community, and we know this takes a lot of time and energy. We recognize that, we respect that, we appreciate it. If you find a committee that you're like, I like that one, or maybe you like all five, but I wouldn't expect that. Get in there. As far as when the committees meetings will be, they're going to be all over the board because we have 5 different lieutenants and multiple sergeants, a lot of community members, our partners in the community. So it's going to be at times perhaps all over the board until they can get really into beginning, and they're just starting. Last week, there were some that were going to start, but the snowstorm came in, so they got tabled. So we're really at the beginning of it. And lastly, we are engaging our excellent partners over at the library to connect the department in with some diverse communities that we don't have the connections in. So myself and one of my assistant chiefs in March, we will be setting a meeting up after hours in the evening at the library, inviting the community to come in and say, Chief, this is what we want you to do in these committees. Knowing that some of those people don't have time to get to the committees, they can give us the feedback. We want you to look at this. We want you to do this. Can you do that? And then I'll share that with the committee chairs. And so that's going to be another opportunity for diverse dialogue, diverse groups, and more information. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick, another meeting that's tomorrow, which is on a list you all were sent out. I know you're getting a ton of information. This is the DDAX. Remember the data-driven system, the monthly meeting. That's also at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning at police headquarters on the first floor there in the foyer. Look for a sign. But that's where they review the monthly DDAX data. And also our.
We actually are doing that electronically because of COVID.
Oh, okay.
So it
Have
will
you
not
put-
be in person tomorrow.
Okay, has that been put out?
It's
Because I don't
put out.
think, I haven't seen it
Yeah, so
put out to Zoom. If that's, is it Zoom?
no, they're just submitting the reports.
Oh, okay. And our city attorney.
Yes, City Attorney.
Chair Pryor, because you are a commission, you act as a body, the one thing I would recommend is that either you have a motion to allow you to appoint people to the different committees, or you set up the committees today, but it probably would not be appropriate for everyone just to be showing up when there isn't a designation by this body for particular people to be attending the committees.
Commissioner Walsh.
Thank you. In general, I believe everything we do should be as a commission, but I think our participation in these committees would be as citizens, not as trust committee members, unless the invitation was only to the entire trust commission. And I can't sit on a committee representing 16 people. I can only represent myself. So I respectfully disagree.
All right. Well, for the time being, because we have 3 minutes. What was that? Would you just like to? Commissioner Black would like to say something.
I'm just wondering if we can let our law enforcement officers head out for their portion with us and potentially make a motion to extend this meeting so we can get through a little bit more of this without keeping you folks any longer tonight. That's my personal opinion.
I second that they are allowed to go. So thank you guys so much. And then we'll do this super quick. I move that we extend our meeting an additional 15 minutes. I saw that look, Ron, only 15.
I second it.
Second it? Okay. All those in favor in extending another 15 minutes, please raise your hand. Excellent. And then those not in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, perfect. It looks like it passes unanimously. We will go until 8:45. All right. So yes, going back to what we need to talk about for next meeting. And we can bring in kind of the stuff about us participating, whether that is as commission members and so on and so forth. But I would like to just say for the next meeting, we definitely need to sit down and digest the information that we have. So I'm open to suggestions as to what that might look like, but if anybody wants to maybe make like a 20-minute presentation, I know that you're very involved in the litigation side of things. If you want to do, a 20-minute presentation, or if somebody wants to bring up a couple of topics, I'm open to suggestions, but we need to start digesting all the stuff that we have.
Since you're looking, I was thinking that we would go through our minutes and look at what we've passed, and what we've reviewed. We have a lot of documents. We've all easily put in hundreds of hours if you read those documents. So the city council's insult last week, 2 weeks ago, was beyond. But if you read my memo, you know that they have recourse. So I think we just, stick to what we're doing. I was thinking we can, just to create some structure, we could actually just start writing our report. One of the things I think that got confused during the status update to city council was that, again, they lured you away from topic. And which I think was their point. And the only point they had was to distract you. But what happened was things were discussed that really weren't decided on by us. So the things, I'll just use the example of Tyra's excellent idea of awarding Ray Mendoza a citizen award, got distracted away from the decision that we made unanimously into the larger conversation that we had sort of discussed and tabled. But everything we do and that we report, we have to base it on our review. It can't be based on gossip, because then we're no better than the Facebook stuff that messes everyone up. So, like with Tara's, we reviewed, the city gave us the stuff that they produced to the plaintiff. We reviewed all the body cams, et cetera. What we saw based on our review was Ray Mendoza acting really well when everyone else wasn't. And so that's what it creates a basis for it. And I think that, like tonight, there were a couple things that came out of this, discussion tonight. And, Steve, you can close yours for a second, but one of my thoughts, and I think it was teed off by Mike, not his thought, but there's something that he said that created this. I think part of the sense of the community is that we want someone who is actually accountable, meaning they're an elected official or they're hired by an elected official, to be in on all the gravy of life in the decision-making, and kind of just having, no accountability on that level. So this would be based on what we learned tonight about how the blue team operates. That might be a recommendation that I had. The litigation stuff is, I think that's the live wire that we got too close to, which is why city council had.
And it was just an example, just to.
Yeah, but there's a lot, to discuss then. So we could do that. I think that we don't, since Steve and Moses apparently are overburdened by this committee, I don't think they need to be here, because I think that would be just more of a working meeting. And I think we could just kind of structure it differently. But I'm happy to, to discuss that. But I think if we focus on what have we reviewed, so that we know what we're basing it on. I think we need, there's some follow-up stuff. We still need HR. We still need the risk manager. We still need Steve Adams is on our list of things to do. But I think we could start a discussion and start kind of formalizing it into a document in draft that we're not releasing until September.
Right.
But I think it'll give us structure.
Okay. So you're proposing that we mainly just work on the actual report itself, and that'll kind of naturally guide what we're talking about into it.
I think so. I mean, just kind of breaking it into sections. It's how I work, but that's
okay. Commissioner Barrett.
Hi, thanks. I just regarding the Jensen Hughes report, they summarized the town hall meetings completely differently from the experience that I had at the town hall meetings. And I've heard that from several people. I wonder if, and I hate to ask for more information for us to digest, but just along the lines of, they had 2 huge town hall meetings to get public consensus and public input on what they didn't trust about the city and how they were feeling. Can we get more detailed information? Do they have more detailed notes that we can have access to? And then, I want to also suggest that we take a look at the survey that was put out and figure out how to distribute it more broadly going forward, to make sure that we're getting a large swath of Loveland rather than just silos. I want to start working on extrapolating the information from the survey results to start looking at, a lot of people have comments about what we should be doing specifically, taking a look at some of those things, and then what ideas the other commissioners have about getting input from the community.
Definitely. So I will defer to city manager. Would that be something that we would be able to get? Commissioner Black, would you be able to rephrase that just a little bit for him? Or sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, the only request for information in there is to ask Jensen Hughes if they'll give us the detailed notes that they took about feedback from the community.
City manager.
So thank you for your request. The way that works is you would make a motion and you would second it and you'd vote on it, and then I'll take it under advisement and go work on it.
Thank you. I would like to move that we request that Jensen Hughes provide more detailed information about the input they received during the town hall meetings, detailed notes.
Could I
Can I
comment
have
on?
a second?
Real quick, Commissioner Scholl.
It's not something at this point I would be willing to support. I mean, because I just don't think it's a reasonable request. The Jensen Hughes report is the Jensen Hughes report. The information provided, I think, is what we're going to get. And I think the city manager is probably being very kind in that he would say that he would take that up, but I doubt that we would be able to add any additional information. Whatever information was important, there are a team of experts that do this around the country. If they feel like it was important information, it would have been included in the report. We have to live with that. We can't seek out information to justify what the conclusions that we're looking for. I think that's where we start to fall apart. And I think, and so I don't think at this point, I think it's a distraction. It's taking us down rabbit holes that we don't need to at this point. And I would hope that we could maybe have a fuller discussion at the next meeting before we just start throwing out motions for extra information.
Respectfully disagree. I was at those meetings, and then the summary does not have information that we need, that we've been asked to get as a commission directly from city council. I have a second on this motion, and I would like to call for a vote.
If we have a second, then that means that we, yes, Tara.
So if we listen to what Commissioner Scholl said.
Can't hear, sorry.
No, I'm not upset. I'm just saying, maybe you could write up notes from what you heard at the meetings, and then we have your, like, you were there. I mean,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me. What if you wrote up what you heard in the meetings and gave that to us? Because I feel like we all trust you. And I know, like, we know we can get it from you. We don't know if we can get it from Jensen Hughes. So maybe that would be an avenue we could go to.
Actually, and I appreciate that. We were told that we did not need to take notes at that because they were going to provide us with the notes, with the detailed notes, and then they didn't.
Yes, Commissioner Black.
I actually heard something completely different, that they weren't going to offer any more detailed comments. I was at both town halls also, and I took very detailed notes. I'm happy to type those up and share those with all of you, but I don't think we're going to get anything else from Jensen Hughes, and I just do not pay them anymore for their time. That's my personal opinion. I wouldn't want to ask Jensen Hughes for anything else, and they were pretty clear. They didn't keep that kind of detailed comment. They went by themes, and they, put all those themes together and then did the report. And they specifically said they would not have specific comments in each of those working rooms. So I just took detailed notes myself, and I would actually like to look through those and kind of see your point and, to see if it was that different or not. But I'm happy to share what I wrote, if that helps.
So, okay, let's go ahead and do this. We do have a motion on the table.
I have a question.
Okay, sure thing.
It's Commissioner.
So I guess
My question is, what are we looking for in that information? What are we looking for from Jensen Hughes that we didn't get from those? Because I was in one of those, I don't know, but we're all
The
the
study
rest of you in
groups?
one of those town halls. I was in one of the virtual ones. And to be honest, I thought it was pretty high level. I didn't really think it was very detailed. My takeaway was it was a lot about feelings and impressions. Like, what do you think about? What do you feel about? So I guess that's my question. What are we looking for from that?
Right, and for me, city council specifically requested that we get more citizen input about what people trust and don't trust in this community. And I thought that was an immensely great forum for that. I thought there was a lot of information given, and I don't have detailed notes. I'd love to see yours, anybody else who attended as well. But I don't know what the harm is in asking them if they have those detailed notes, if they can, because they wrote them down on a sheet of paper.
So let's just, since we already have the motion on the table, let's just go ahead and do the vote real quick. Will you say the motion one more time for us, please, Commissioner Barrett?
Okay, I'd just like to request that Jensen Hughes be asked to provide the detailed notes from the 2 town halls that they took during those town halls.
Okay. And then Jessica Schneider, you were the one who seconded that, correct? Okay. All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. All right. The motion does not pass. But Catherine, we can definitely come back to this at some point. Okay. So to get back to figuring out the agenda for the next meeting, it looks like we're wanting to start the report, doing some minute review, kind of just, I think we just kind of let it happen organically is kind of what it sounds like. Yes, Commissioner Scholl.
I didn't want to necessarily comment on Commissioner Barrett's motion. I really wanted to follow up on Commissioner Walsh's approach, which I agree with. And I think, because I have some ideas based on the information that's been provided in areas that we can go down and look at recommendations, I think that would be helpful, and that would be based on a solid foundation of information that's been provided to us. I'd like to, if we can have a meeting where we can bring those and some of the recommendations and have a discussion similar, I think, to kind of along the lines of what Commissioner Walsh was. I think that would be a really good idea. And then perhaps if we have enough of we can look at maybe forming a group or a small group or point to do the drafting work and providing that going forward. And I would be willing to to be part of the authoring of some of those if need be, but I'm not. So I do think we should have kind of an open meeting, though I still, there's a few kind of people that I would like to hear from before we kind of start to etch those in stone, I think.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Black and then Commissioner Stoddard.
I just have a question for the city manager. So I heard that the Karen Gardner investigation was released. You have it. I'm just wondering when we can expect to be able to have that released to the commission.
Thank you for that question. The question I was asked is, do we have the IA report? The answer was yes. Can the report be released yet? And the answer is still no. As I've explained to this group several times, we've always said we had it. We just can't release it until we're done with the steps in the process that are being gone through right now on a city policy basis. So until those are done, and you'd asked me when is the time that I estimate that will be done, we're hopeful April, early April or late March. And it's not within our control on this next step, and that's what we're waiting for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stoddard.
Yes, regarding getting community input, we have a survey that's out there now. And bypassing for a minute whether it's a survey all of us would have put together or not, we do have a lot of input coming in. And I think it would be beneficial to get a lot more input. My question of the city manager is, would it be possible to get a link to that survey and some nice little invitation for the community to participate, put out in the next City of Loveland utility newsletter?
That's a great question, Commissioner. And I guess my only question is, I think the deadline for reporting that was today, right? The 7th?
What was that?
The response to the survey was today.
I mean, that wasn't officially motioned by anybody. That's just
I
around
mean,
the
that's what's
time.
on the survey now, right? It's
Yeah, it can be changed though. It can be edited.
So if
Take that off and
and
keep going.
we had said all along, one of the areas we talked about was engaging with the Office of Community Engagement and helping get whatever you all decide to put out into the public. We get somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 people responding things we place out on our different platforms.
And I hate
We're
to.
willing to do that. We just didn't know it was done.
Yeah.
But would certainly.
Could we motion to extend the meeting by 5 minutes?
I second.
Chair Pryor?
Okay, those of you who are willing to extend the meeting, please raise your hand. Okay, cool.
But speak fast.
Yes, please. Okay. Yes, Tara.
I am great with that. I would ask that we change the survey questions because education is not in our purview. So it's skewing the entire statistics of the
So
survey.
if that were the case, we would have to do a whole new one because it would change the integrity of the survey. That I'm not opposed to making a new one, but we would have to start from scratch.
Commissioner.
Yeah.
We can get it in Spanish too, because.
Yes.
And I sent it to my Hispanic friend. She said, okay, so.
There
So
should
I
be
walked
a,
them through
yeah,
the Google Docs, the right click and all that.
Yeah.
but I would prefer to have sent that to a group of my people in Spanish.
correct.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
You had extended kind of a mea culpa at the beginning, which I appreciate in terms of how that survey was handled. And so I don't want to revisit that. But what I do want to say is the data that we use, how you collect data is often and sometimes more important than the data itself. And I think the problem I have with the way that it was handled and the way it was distributed and the questions and the lack of transparency that occurred around it, I don't think that we can stand on that data to city council and represent it as somehow of speaking from the voice of the community. And no offense to, because I know you were well intended, and I'm not directing this at you personally. So I think that when it comes to survey and seeking that data, and I think we have to be very careful. I think that a comment was made earlier that I think we have to be really pristine in how we collect data and how we formulate our recommendations if we expect them to be taken seriously. And I think at this point, I don't want to keep having an internal fights about the survey. I think that it was done. I appreciated that, your intention, but I would rather park that and think if we're going to do something, approach it a little bit more thoughtful with the consent of and the approval of the entire commission, as opposed to continuing to rely on something that I think I'm troubled with. And so I'm going to leave that. And one other comment, and then I'll stop. I promise. The other thing is that we're governed by the language in the ordinance, not by public opinion. And the language of the ordinance is clear. And I think there was a commenter so I want to caution about the use of going out in the survey and having the community tell us, that if our charge is in the ordinance, it's not a function of the city council they can live with public opinion. That's their role. So I just want to be careful about how deeply we wade into that. And so thank you.
Thank you. And, I agree to many of your points. I think that the survey gives us some insight. We can just kind of call it what it is. It was a botched attempt at something that had good intention behind it. And If that's something we want to revisit, we can. Real quick, though, I do want Jeffrey to kind of just go over the points that we have as to what we want to do for the next agenda so we can all go home.
Right, so we've got about a minute left. It sounds like there's two things on the table right now. One is the agenda for the next meeting and one is the survey. Sounds like there's some suggestions to either extend the survey, broadcast it more deeply, or potentially close this potential survey and have some subsequent one down the line. So that's a question that you all can answer either today or at the next meeting. The other part is how exactly it sounds like you've agreed that you're going to be looking at information at the next meeting. How are you going to do that based on Commissioner Walsh's ideas, Commissioner Scholl's and some of the others? It sounded to me like we could come to this meeting with a list of and it could obviously will be in the meeting packets you see beforehand, list of everything that you've requested to date, list of all the briefings that you've done, the information that you've reviewed, and then you start into a discussion moving sort of line by line on those about those issues, and you can start to think and develop and debate ideas, concepts, even maybe recommendations. That was just my sort of capture of what I heard you talk about.
That sound about right to everyone. I believe Commissioner Butler had her hand up first.
And I would move that we make 8:30 the normal time.
Yes, I plan to put a little piece about that in the intro.
Well, we need.
Oh, as part of the agenda for the next meeting? Got it. Thank you. Yep, noted.
All right. Ward, it's gotta be real quick. Ward Black.
And this is Commissioner Ward. Are we at some point going to review what City Council had to say about our presentation? Because I think some of their questions and comments and concerns need to be addressed in our.
We can put that into the
I really
list.
want to do that, but I
Yeah.
think we need to do that.
Yeah, we'll
I
put
was
that in
there
with the
with
list
that.
that Jeffrey has. And
Okay.
Commissioner Black, this will be the last question.
Commissioner Black, and as far as the working groups with the LPD, one is tomorrow. Commissioner Swiger is planning on going. That was one of the groups that I wanted to be part of too. And I'm not sure leaving this meeting, do Commissioner Swiger and I go ahead and show up tomorrow? Or
Yes, as
where
long
we
as
at
there's
on
only
that?
two of you guys, it should be okay.
But that doesn't. Just to be clear, even if more than two people show up, it's a public meeting and you're not discussing business in private. So more than, it's not limited.
Okay.
I just wanted to be sure that.
Yeah, sure thing. All right, you guys, with that, I will see you guys in 2 weeks.
One note.
Yes.